The time on my phone read 3 a.m. I kicked the blankets off me. I was hot and I hated waking up so close to when I needed to start my day. I got up and started heading out of my room, feeling my way through the darkness and looking for landmarks. I thought about grabbing my glasses, but I was too lazy. My hand brushed against the mini fridge near my door. I reached for where I thought the door handle should be. After a few tries, I found it and opened the door. I started down the hall toward the stairs, regretting not grabbing my glasses, but I just wanted to get some water and go back to bed. I knew that if I turned on the light to find them, I'd be wide awake. As I reached the stairs, I slowed, frantically searching for the railing. When I finally found it, I began descending. This part was easy. I'd lived in this house my entire life. My dad had bought this house as a surprise for my mom. Back then, they had been living with my dad's mother, and my mom and grandmother didn't get along, to say the least. I remember my dad telling me she once said she would rather die than let her child be raised by that demon woman. My dad wanted to be a smartass and say something, but he knew better than to mess with my mom when she was worked up. I felt something fall into my eye. I reached down, grabbed the collar of my t-shirt, and rubbed my eye. It hit me suddenly. I'd been walking far longer than I should have been. I blinked repeatedly, my eyes stinging from the overnight crust. My living room slowly came into focus, blurry and distorted without my glasses. At first glance, everything appeared fine, but then I realized I was partially submerged in the floor. I squinted, trying to confirm what I was seeing, but the shape shifted, making it hard to tell what was real. I tried to stop moving, but I was no longer in control of my legs. I couldn't stop. I reached for the spindles under the handrails, trying to steady myself, but my feet kept marching uncontrollably toward God knows what. I was now looking up at my living room, which was getting smaller and smaller. My feet began moving faster, each stomp sending vibrations up my spine. Heat started to emanate from below me, filling the small space and making it harder to breathe. It was completely dark now, my living room reduced to a tiny speck floating above me. The railing disappeared from my hands. I reached into the darkness, grasping for anything to steady myself. I found what felt like a wall on either side of me. It was cold and began to crumble away as my hand dragged along it. I dug my fingers deeper into the walls, trying to find something solid to hold on to, but there was nothing. I kept pulling out piles of what felt like coffee grounds and cracked eggs. A viscous, snot-like substance began running down my hands and forearms. I screamed at the top of my lungs. I can't see. I didn't even know why I screamed that. I didn't want to see what was on my hands and arms. I just wanted control of something, anything. I went to let out another cry for help, and that's when I felt them, thousands of little legs crawling all over my body. Some of them worked their way up to my face. I slapped and clawed at whatever they were, frantically trying to brush them off my neck and shoulders. I ripped my shirt off as fast as I could, whipping it around my body, desperate to swipe away what was left of the bugs. Before I could catch my breath, my feet began moving even faster, slamming against the stairs with brutal force. Each step felt like a sledgehammer driving into my bones, the vibrations ricocheting through my legs and spine. The sound of the stomping was deafening, a violent echo that consumed the air around me. I was no longer descending the staircase. I was hurtling down it, my body a ragdoll flung into the abyss by some unseen merciless force. Below, I could finally see a light. It had a red, fiery glow that consumed the staircase and walls around me as I plunged further into the earth, the glow intensifying with every step, painting the walls in flickering shades of crimson and gold. As I hurtled closer to the light, a low, mournful sound began to fill the air. It was a steady, haunting moan, rising and falling in the same tone, making it impossible to tell if it was human or mechanical. Finally, I saw the source of the light, a large archway at the bottom of the staircase. As I approached, I noticed a keystone at the top adorned with an upside-down pentagram. Writing flanked the arch on both sides, etched in a language I had never seen before. I was moving so fast, however, that it was impossible to make out any further details. Right before I was about to cross beneath the arch, I came to a sudden stop. The top half of my body whipped forward, and I instinctively reached for the sides of the arch to steady myself. The stone was so hot it instantly seared my skin, pain shooting through my hands like fire. I blew on them and shook them, desperate to cool them off. Using my forearm, I wiped my eyes, trying to adjust to the blinding light. Slowly, my vision began to focus. Cursing myself again for not grabbing my glasses, I realized I was standing at the entrance of a massive cave-like structure. The stairs descended to an island surrounded by molten lava, glowing ominously in the center of the cavern. Above, the ceiling was lost in an infinite void of black nothingness. I could see 4 other staircases leading out from the walls to the island. Each had figures marching down them. I squinted, trying to make out what they were, and to my horror, I realized they were people being pulled down the staircases, just like me. Their bodies were twisted and bent backward as they desperately tried to stop themselves from moving forward. I noticed a man near the bottom of the staircase to my left. He was lying flat on his back, his arms wrapped around his right leg, yanking violently at it in an attempt to stop it from moving. What were they so afraid of? The thought lingered briefly before I felt like an idiot for even asking. I scanned the island, but it appeared empty. I couldn't see anything. I turned back to the man as he neared the edge of the staircase. He was screaming now, pulling harder at his leg. The desperation etched across his face. Just before reaching the island, he fell, plummeting into the molten lava below, his screams swallowed by the searing heat. That's what they were afraid of. The staircases weren't connected to the island. My feet began marching uncontrollably again. Forgetting the burns I had suffered earlier, I reached out for the walls in a desperate attempt to stop myself, only to sear my hands on the blistering stone once more. The staircase was just as hot as the walls. I screamed in agony, each step burning the soles of my feet. My movements slowed, each step deliberate, as though the force dragging me toward the island wanted me to feel every excruciating moment of the pain. I could feel the flesh of my feet sizzle and cook like meat on a frying pan. The soft, fleshy centers began to melt, sticking to the scorching stone with each step and tearing away more of my skin as I was forced to move forward. The pain became unbearable. I fell backward, catching myself with my already burned hands. Unable to right myself, I continued crab walking toward what felt like inevitable death. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a wave-like movement in the lava below. I squinted, my vision fuzzy and unreliable, trying to make sense of the shapes in the lava below. With a jolt of dread, I realized it was people, somehow still alive, their outlines warped and distorted by the heat and my blurry sight. Thousands upon thousands of them floating, screaming, and holding their hands up toward the ceiling as if reaching for an invisible ledge to pull themselves out. A few of them were eerily silent, locked in a trance-like state. They weren't screaming but staring at the ceiling. I thought they might be dead, but then I saw a few of them lunge periodically toward the ceiling, as if still trying to escape. I looked up, expecting the endless void of nothingness, but instead I saw my family sitting around a pool. The wind blew softly, rippling the surface of the water. Some of my family members were shivering, drying themselves off with towels. My mom moved between them with a big pitcher of ice-cold water, filling everyone's cups. They drank greedily, as if they hadn't had water in days. Then my mom turned, her eyes locking onto mine as though she could actually see me. She sighed, smiled, and shook her head in that familiar way, like she always did when I messed up as a kid and she'd come to my rescue. She poured water into a glass, tilting it toward me as though offering it. I felt my mouth water, and I opened it in anticipation, but no water ever reached me. That's what those poor fucking souls were looking up at, or some personal version of it. This place wasn't just tormenting them, it was mocking them. I was nearing the end of my staircase and could now see the gap between the staircase and the island. I couldn't feel my hands or legs anymore. I didn't know if I had grown numb to the pain or if my nerves had melted away completely. I was too afraid to look down, unsure if my hands and feet were even still attached. As I neared the edge, I closed my eyes and braced for the fall, but it never came. I opened my eyes to find myself floating toward the island instead. The center of the island began to spin and crumble away, leaving nothing but a gaping hole. Smoke and fire poured out of it, twisting and darting around the island like predators searching for something to devour. For a moment, I thought I would be dropped into the fiery center, but instead I was gently set down just before reaching the edge of the hole. The smoke and fire lunged closer, as though it were examining me. I squinted up at it and could swear I saw a face staring back. The swirling flames and smoke began to spiral around me, forming a vortex with me at its center. I couldn't breathe. The thick smoke filled my lungs, and I clawed desperately at my chest and throat, trying to draw in air. The face in the smoke reappeared clearer this time. It wasn't a human face. Its eyes were made of fire, and it seemed to have horns coming out of its head. It reached out towards me through the smoke, its hand grabbing my shoulder and searing the skin. Unable to scream, unable to breathe, I fainted. I woke up screaming at the top of my lungs. The transition from darkness to daylight left me disoriented, unsure if I was truly awake or still trapped in the nightmare. I was back in my bed and it was morning now. I was drenched in sweat. My mom came bursting into my room. "What is it? What happened, sweetheart?" "I don't know. I must have had a bad dream," I replied. She pressed her hand against my forehead. "You're burning up. I think you have a fever. Go wash up and I'll get you some meds." "Okay, thanks, Mom." I walked to the bathroom and turned on the faucet. The cold water felt amazing on my skin. I cupped my hands and splashed some water on my face. As I wiped my face and looked into the mirror, I muttered, "What the hell was that?" I poured more water onto my face. I heard my mom's hurried footsteps on the stairs. "I'm just going to change your sheets and covers. They're soaked," she called out. "Okay, Mom, thank you," I shouted back. A sudden piercing scream jolted me. I rushed back to my room, heart pounding, and found my mom standing over my bed. She held the covers in one hand, the other clasped tightly over her mouth. I ran to see what she was looking at, and my bed was covered in black soot.